All right, welcome everyone. Give us a second, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us a comment so we know that you can actually see us. And no, it just popped me back out. So maybe. Hold on here. All right, some days I just love technology.
I
Absolutely.
understand.
All right, let's see. Started to, and then it literally kicked me off. Okay, so maybe I'm working here. Let's see. Change screens. Boy, I tell you what. Okay. I might have to just edit off the first 30 seconds, but I am so excited and I'm so happy you stuck with us here for a second. With the Senior Resource Center, I am welcoming our Executive Director of the Senior Resource Center, Sonia Shoemaker, and the Assistant Director, Amanda Favor. And I'm so happy to be able to talk to you guys about some of the different things that you guys offer and so many different things you guys offer.
Yes.
Thanks
we're
for
excited
having
to
us.
be here too.
Yeah,
Yes. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yep. So, I know a lot of people right now are hearing all open enrollment, Medicare, open enrollment. There's probably 10 ads every few minutes, with what options to pick and things like that. And I'm sure people are getting stuff in the mail too, and they don't know what to pick. And I know that's one of the things I wanted to talk about with you guys that you offer to help people with their open enrollment. And we talked about like why, they need your help, right? And so let's talk about that a little bit and what you can help them with.
Sure. I think, one of the biggest points of making sure and double checking your package for the next year, your insurance, is making sure that it lines up with all of the medications that you take. Making sure that you choose the right option, and our specialists receive training to do that. They are certified in SHIP training to do that, as well as the volunteers that we have that assist our paid employees to assist the community members in looking at their packages for the next year.
Yes. And, every year there's adjustments and maybe medications that are covered under a specific Part D plan. So that's something that, you may come one year and you might not think you need to come again, but I know that it's strongly encouraged that you come every year, and, that you actually maybe sit down and take a look every year, just because there could be those changes and you could have an opportunity to save some money.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to ask you was, well, if I did it, a year or two ago, do I need to do it again? I mean, why? And so,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
yeah,
It is something they do encourage to do every year, and, it may stay the same, and that's okay. But in the event that it doesn't, and you have a chance to, save a little cash, we could all use a little extra in our pocket.
Yes.
Then that's something that, we want to be able to do to help, seniors kind of navigate that.
right. Right.
It can be a little overwhelming, so.
Yeah. There's so many different options out there. And like I said, and you get different things in the mail and, should I sign up with this, or you hear ads about, this discount prescription programs and all these things. And so, yeah.
Very overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely. So, and then one of the things we have coming up is tax season. I don't even want to think about it, but it'll be here before we know it, right? Open enrollment ends and then you kind of roll into tax season.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so tell me about how you guys can help with tax preparation and helping people, with their taxes, income taxes.
Sure. Yeah. So our tax program is volunteer led through AARP. So they assist individuals with preparing their taxes if they still need to have them prepared. We could use some tax volunteers. So if anyone would like to assist us with that, they can contact the office and we can put them
In
on contact with our coordinator,
Yes.
which is a volunteer that helps with that.
Yeah.
They're wonderful people that take time out of their days to assist individuals in maneuvering through their tax process.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's And that's just
Yeah.
around the corner.
It
So,
is.
Right.
It
Like I said,
is.
it'll be here before we know it.
right.
And I'll definitely put all of the contact information down here below as well.
That would be
Obviously,
great.
you know, people can know that they can just go to Search Senior Resource Center and give you guys a call to schedule appointments for any of these things we're talking about. You know, definitely. Or if you have a family member who, you know, you want to make sure that they have
Yes.
in,
Yeah.
you know, and talk to you guys. So you know, and then that's one of the things that I see a lot, speaking of, you know, talking to you guys about, is people wanting to stay in their home, which I totally appreciate and understand that, you know, we all want to stay in our home,
Mhm.
but how can we stay in our home, and
Right.
how can we stay in our home safely?
Yes.
So you yourself, or you might have a family member, or you might have, you know, someone you know, or you know, that is either having some illnesses or things like that. And I know I had one of our team who, they had a family member who was not over 60. You know, it wasn't that they were what you would consider an elderly person,
For
but
sure.
you know, they were dealing with some illnesses and gonna, you know, need some in-home care. And
Mhm.
so you guys have a lot of resources for that, right? A lot of information and help.
We do. One of the big programs that for us, it's a contracted program, a waiver program through the state of Illinois, the Illinois Department on Aging. It's called the Community Care Program. Our case management staff is able to meet with participants as, you know, if somebody wants to make a referral, maybe, you
Mhm.
know, you've got a parent that is living alone, you're concerned about them, they maybe just need a little help. I mean, it doesn't have to be that they need, you know, necessarily 24-hour care. And this program isn't a 24-hour care program. So
Mhm.
it's just maybe they need some help with laundry. They can't get down the steps to do it anymore, running errands, you know, light housekeeping. They make meals, can, you know, help with bathing, dressing, things like that. If you want that, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have personal care done if you take on this service. It is just an option.
Mhm.
The other thing that, you know, this case management can assist with this program is an emergency response button. So kind of like I think people can refer to it, maybe they recognize Lifeline, you know.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And so there's several different companies that the state contracts with for that. And then there's an automated medication dispenser. That is something that's a little newer for the program. You have to have a designated person that can load your medicine into it, but it will release medication on a timed basis and
Mhm.
kind of make a notification if maybe the person isn't taking it or not.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that they do have is the adult day center.
Mhm.
And we, as an agency, our programs cover Stephenson and Joe Davis counties. Unfortunately, the adult day center did close down during COVID for Joe Davis County. However, we still have Ascension, Presence, St. Joe's adult day center here in Freeport, and we do have a lot of you know, participants that attend that. These programs, if you qualify for the community care program, so say a case you've made a referral, we set up a time to come out, a case manager comes out to meet with you, your family, whoever you want present. They will kind of go through all of those options and create a plan of care. You do have to qualify
Mhm.
for this to be paid. The state does pay for all of this, so it's at no cost if you qualify.
Right.
There are several qualifiers, but kind of the main one are the financial. It doesn't look at income, but they do look at your liquid assets. So
Mm.
if you're a single person, you can have up to $17,500 in liquid assets. Now that's not counting a house or a car, so we don't look at that. Or if you're a married couple, it is 36,000,
Mhm.
35,000. I always get
Mhm.
that 1,000 off, but that combined. So for that program, in order to be a part of that program, those are kind of the limitations.
Right.
We can still come out and see you, say maybe you are over assets, but you
Mhm.
don't know where to turn. We
Mhm.
can still have the case managers come out and meet with you, and kind of they'll still do a full assessment to kind of get an
Mhm.
idea of what the needs are, and then we can help you know, maybe set up some of these other services. They would be private pay, but we'd be happy to help set up, you know, help
Right.
set up home delivered meals through Golden Meals. You know, maybe get some of the durable medical equipment that we can recognize you maybe are needing, grab bars in
Right.
the bathtub. So things like that. So That program, the case management program, the goal is to keep people in their homes. That's what
Right.
we want to do, but it needs to be a safe
Right.
plan of care.
Right.
And that's what's really an important thing to say is we need to be able to put in a safe plan of care in order to keep these services in the home.
Right.
They're not 24-hour care, like I said, it's more of a task-based.
Right.
So if it's somebody's looking for overnight care or around the clock care, that isn't something that this program would cover. But,
Right.
like I said, with the case managers, we're happy to kind of work through some of, maybe the barriers that maybe somebody might have if they don't necessarily qualify for that program, they still could have case management.
Right. Well, and that, like you said, it is, just little parts of it, because I know, like, as my family, got elder, it was, she just couldn't stand to cook. And,
Yes.
and so, so they would, they would eat just like peanut butter and celery for lunch because, she couldn't cook a meal, and,
Yeah.
and so it's little things like that. And so as I saw that as, as a family member, it was, okay, well, can I bring some meals? Can we have somebody, come in and do some meals? Can we have somebody come in and cook? I mean, what are the options, and things. And so, like you said, being able to call somebody like you guys and say, okay, what are my options? Like,
Mhm.
what are their
Absolutely.
options? What can
Yeah.
I, get help with, because I can't do it all, or,
Right.
and so, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
And we see that a lot. We get a lot of calls on
We
that,
do.
and we're more than happy to, make the referrals that need to be
Yep.
made, point people in the right direction if
Yep.
maybe they want to make the calls themselves. But yeah, that's
Talk
something.
about it.
Yeah.
Help build a bridge, thinking
Yes.
outside
right.
the box a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, right,
absolutely.
right. Like you said, how can we keep them safe, but yet keep them in their home? Because,
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
course they want to
Right.
stay in their home, but
Of
it's not
course.
always
Yes.
safe.
Yeah.
So,
Right. And maybe it's they have a pet, they have a dog, and getting outside and walking, their beloved dog is not as easy. So we assist with looking for a local dog walker or,
Mhm.
that kind of thing, helping them kind of, build those
Right,
bridges and figure things
right.
out.
Right. Good
So,
point. Well, and that brings us to one of the other tools that you guys really are, and it's part of your name as the Senior Resource Center, but you guys are like the information resource repository there. It's
Yeah.
like, it's so, we talked about this, that, no question is dumb, people, if you have
no,
a question, or you're thinking about something, or you're worried about something, or you're not sure, just pick up the phone and call,
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Even if it's a matter of getting the garbage can down to the curb anymore. I mean, we have resources we can
Yeah.
call, there's ways that we can think, to get that down.
Yeah.
Right.
Of,
Right.
or if they, there's also a form we can fill out that if they can no longer take it down, but they can leave it up by the house, that's something that we can look into,
Right.
with the city or where they live, depending on where they
Right.
live. And there's lots of resources.
Yes.
Lots of
Right.
resources.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And like, I hadn't even thought about that. Right.
Yeah.
So,
It's, what, it honestly, a lot of these things we didn't necessarily think about upfront either. But
Right.
as these questions have come in, you kind of start gathering like this resource bucket, and
Yep.
Right.
we share that with each other. And so, it's kind of interesting because some of the things that you get asked, you're like, what, that's a really great question. Let me see what I can find out. So, we may
Right.
not have all the answers, but we're going to try to do our best to kind of point you in the right direction or find those answers for you. So,
Right.
and like
Right.
Sonia said, the key is kind of thinking outside the box because, sometimes you have to get creative in order to, make things, work for you.
Right. Right. Come up with that solution, or a combination of this entity and that entity. And okay, let's.
Absolutely. And with our community partners, because I mean, that old saying, it takes a village. That's so true.
Yeah.
It takes a
Right.
village. So,
Right. Right.
Yep.
Absolutely. Right. And there might just be a situation where somebody in the family doesn't even realize that this is going on, or that, I have a fellow realtor who, she went to a listing appointment, and she ended up leaving and calling the son and the daughter and things like that, because she saw things and realized that the person was further along in dementia than probably anybody in the family realized.
Yeah, sure.
And, because on a surface level, you can not even realize that someone has dementia, or someone is
Absolutely.
having, some
Right.
of those.
And a lot of people have family that live out of town, and they're maybe
Oh,
not
yeah.
seeing that, and what's being told to them when they're talking to them on the phone, maybe there's not always, a
Right.
good until you actually get eyes on it and kind of see it for yourself, it is difficult to really know truly what's happening.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Cause just talking to him on the phone, it's like, oh, everything's fine. I'm good. No
Right.
big deal. And,
Yeah.
That's a really good point, and that's why one of the mandates and stuff with with a couple of our
Mhm.
programs, the community care program and adult protective services, is we do go in the home. We need
Mhm.
those
Yes.
eyeballs on
Yeah.
them, because that's exactly how we can get a real clear picture of exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, the adult protective services. So tell me a little bit about that and what that does. And so if we have a family member, or if you are a person who, feels like you might need some of that help.
Sure. For adult protective services, we have caseworkers here who are trained and certified with the state of Illinois. We serve seniors 60 and over, and adults with disabilities, 18 years of age and to 59.
Mhm.
So that is the one program that we have that we do serve for under 60. Allegations could be of, financial exploitation. That's a big one right now, unfortunately. Passive neglect. Maybe you don't necessarily mean to not be doing the right thing for mom or dad, but you're maybe just not doing enough, and they're kind of suffering for that. So then there, is just, there's neglect, there's physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional. The reports like that come into us, whether it be from just community, just from people in the community, or actually
Doctors,
our community partners, the doctors, the police,
bank
fire,
employees.
yes, bank employees,
Mhm.
you name it. Anybody who's a mandated reporter for DCFS or child abuse, they're
Mhm.
also a mandated reporter for adult protective services.
Okay.
So that is something to kind of keep in mind. So if you're a teacher and you know that you're a mandated reporter for children, please keep that in mind, that you're also a mandated reporter for abuse of, adults with disabilities and seniors.
Mhm.
A little bit, oh, go ahead.
The reporter is anonymous.
Yes.
Remains anonymous.
Yes.
So when a concerned community member calls to make
A
that
neighbor,
report,
a friend
Yep,
that doesn't want
yep.
their name out. Yes.
they remain anonymous. And then we have an investigation piece that we take the information, if it constitutes to be considered a report, and then we go into the investigation stage. And it is a client-led program. So if
Yeah.
the client states that they want us to go away, they don't need our assistance, we abide by that unless there lacks decisional capacity.
Mhm.
And then we work in the best interest of that individual on their
Yes.
behalf.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that is a little different than more the child aspect, because children aren't able to necessarily speak for themselves when it comes to that. With adults, that's kind of the approach that the state has taken, that it is
Right.
a client led. So we do have to honor that. It's not always an easy thing. It's not easy for us. It's not easy for the people that are seeing it. But sometimes it may take 1 to 2, 3, 4 reports before somebody actually hits a point where they're ready for some help. And
Right.
we try, our caseworkers are really great at trying to build a rapport, kind of build a bond with maybe the person, to kind of get them, as far as building some trust.
Right.
And then,
Right.
we're able to get in there and offer supports and services, not only for the person that is maybe being abused, but for the person who is doing the abusing. Because sometimes it's just a lack of knowledge,
Absolutely.
and care.
Right.
Especially in your passive neglect.
Yes.
You have family members that are burnt out. They're working full-time jobs. They're raising their own family. They're trying to take care of mom,
Mhm.
dad, great aunt, great uncle, whatever the case may be, mother-in-law, father-in-law. They're exhausted. And
Right.
really, it's not malicious.
Right.
They're
No.
doing the best they can with the information they have.
Right. And the
so
resources they have.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's where we
Right.
step in. Okay, you need some help. You
Right.
need some
Right.
help.
Right.
And
So-
that's kind of a big
Mhm.
part of that program is,
Right.
putting in services and things to, help, I guess, ease the situation and
To add support to the entire,
yes.
to the entire system, to the entire family. Says,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it's, it's overwhelming. Like you said, you're taking, and I think I think we all, and especially women ourselves, we end up, we take it on, we take it on, we take it on, we take it on, and then it's like, okay, wait a minute, I can't cook for everybody, I can't clean for everybody, I can't be in all places, I can't work, otherwise eventually you're going to collapse. So
Right. So in that part, you're right. That's the non-malicious part of the program. And then the other part of the program is where we do want to be able to put paid caregivers with the assistance of Illinois Department on Aging on a registry so that they cannot abuse the individuals that they're caring for and being paid to care for, or not being paid to care for, because we don't want those individuals leaving this individual and caring for them and then going on to someone else and doing the same thing to them. So there's that part of the program that the state has created a registry for those that
have substantiated cases of
abuse with a caregiver. So
And
no, absolutely, you want to stop that cycle.
Yes. And we also for a lot of the financial exploitation situations, sometimes it's just a matter of getting maybe somebody's name off of a checking account, or we're able to, if somebody is with the Adult Protective Services or our community care program, they're able to have some money management assistance with our money management coordinator here, where we can kind of help pay bills, balance the statements every month, kind of keep an eye on things. So we really try to make sure we're kind of helping the individuals that maybe need that extra eye on their accounts.
Which is unfortunately probably how they got in that position to begin with. So we follow through with that, then making sure that their funds are being adequately taken care of.
And another part of the other part of the Adult Protective Services is that we also can investigate cases of self-neglect. So maybe somebody, you have a neighbor, there's a hoarding situation, they're not taking care of themselves.
Not going to the doctor.
They're not maybe getting food, they're not eating, but though we are able to have a caseworker go out and maybe, see if there's anything that we can do to kind of assist. Now, are we always able to, get them to agree? No, but we do our best, kind of like I said in the past, build a rapport with them. And then we have had some success, honestly, with some of our more recent clients, in that they are becoming more willing to maybe have somebody come in and help clean the place, maybe have an exterminator come in, maybe have things fixed, so.
And they feel better. They feel a lot better. They're getting the right medication.
Yeah, so they get their meds.
They're getting their meds.
So those are kind of some of the scenarios that we run into with the Adult Protective Services.
We had a family member who we didn't realize was not eating well, and and so at one point went to the store together and saw what they were buying, and was like, okay, wait a minute, and so got them set up on the meals, and then we do once a week, and and supplement that and things like that. But then now they've been able to get taken off of their diabetes medicine because they're eating
that's
properly.
Wonderful.
Yay.
And come to find out, it was really just because of their food they were eating that was causing their blood sugar to just go craziness.
And of course they felt horrible, and
always felt tired, and very lethargic, not feeling well, and now just made a huge difference. And so it just little things, and like you said, you don't really realize, like, okay, this person this, and then you see what they're eating and went, oh, this is not okay. So,
and it's understandable. Eating that, it's so much easier, right? It's easier to get that quick stuff because it's hard when your hands hurt and you're older and you're trying to open up this or open up that or chop that or it's not easy.
And when you're just one person too, I'm getting to that point in my life where I'm like, oh, I don't want to do all that cooking,
Absolutely.
If you are just one person, or if you're, if you're older and they don't eat that much, my grandma would say all the time, well, I'm not that hungry. Well, I get that, Grandma, but you need to eat. You still have to have some protein. Your body still needs to have nutrients. Otherwise, you're just destroying your body from the inside.
Right. So, and not just that Oreo with a cup of coffee, even though that's fun.
How well did you know my grandma?
Because that would be me. That's what I would go for.
Yep. Yep. So, and then that also brings me to kind of, we were talking about the financial thing, and I have seen this with family. Heck, I've seen it myself that we get, that is all of the stuff that you get in the mail, the phone
Oh,
calls you get, this is your long lost grandson, here's this to donate money to,
Yeah.
here's this to renew your car insurance. I mean, there are so many scams out there,
Yes.
so many.
It's
right.
very overwhelming.
Very.
For me, it's
Oh,
overwhelming
it's
for me,
over
and then
for me.
overwhelming to maybe someone who just doesn't quite understand exactly, how some of that works. And so, we were more than happy to, if somebody wants to call and say, hey, I got this in the mail and it looks questionable. Can I bring it down to have you take a look at it? And
Right.
Absolutely.
we're happy to kind of take a look, because, and that's kind of how you become aware that maybe this is going on. And then we kind of make our case managers and our caseworkers aware of it, and our information assistant staff, so that they can also answer those questions, and just to be kind of on the lookout for, hey, are any of your clients receiving these, kind of giving them a heads up. So,
Right. And if it's beyond us, we haven't
Yes.
seen it before, but it looks real, because so much of that stuff looks real.
Yeah.
We ask, someone beyond us, we'll get legal advice.
Mhm.
We'll get, we will ask before we tell anyone anything. Hey, what do you think's up with this? Is this because so much of that does look very real?
It does.
And
Right.
we don't ever want to give anyone inadequate information. So
No.
we have no problem asking someone else if it's,
Right.
above our heads.
Yes.
So
Right.
for sure.
But yeah, like you said, people get stuff in the mail, or I saw stuff sitting on the table at families, and would look at it, and like you said, if you're not sure, call and ask, and don't feel like it is a dumb question to
Right.
No.
ask. And there's so many things out there between social media and texts and phone calls that people will also get, before you respond, or before you do anything. Just ask somebody, call
Yep.
somebody and ask somebody, call a
Yeah.
friend.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes,
Yep.
definitely.
Call us.
yep, yeah. So, so that definitely, so many scams out there, one to talk about. We talked about making sure people know that you cover Stephenson and Joe Davis County.
Yes.
And so how you guys have been handling some of these rural areas. You're going out 2 different locations, correct? Is that how you're
Correct.
doing that, or?
Yeah, we decided to kind of get a little more creative, especially Joe Davis is a very rural county. And instead of having people drive to, we had a small office that wasn't always, available at the time, because the case manager who worked out there was out seeing people. That's what the job was, and so we would hate for someone to drive all the way from, say, Warren to Hanover, maybe, and the office isn't open. And so we found, prior to COVID, we had started these community outreach sites where we were going to, the library in Stockton, and the community building in Warren is where we're at now. And then we're back at the Hanover Park District, the West Galena Township building. So we are going to all of these, small, these areas that don't necessarily, it kind of limits the amount of travel that people have to do.
Right.
And
Right.
one of our information assistant staff will, we take appointments. It's appointment only, because we want to be sure that we're prepared to best serve the people that want to come in, and they have questions. Maybe they need to bring the correct paperwork, forms, and we want to make sure we're prepared as well to answer those questions. So it's by appointment. We're out seeing people at these different locations once a month. Each location has a once a month schedule. West Galena Township at this point has 2 days, because it's a very popular one. If we find that maybe there's more people than slots open, we'll open another day at that location. We're not opposed to that at all. In fact, we would love to see more of that, because then that means we're reaching more people. And, I think what we're finding is we're getting a lot of positive feedback with that. People aren't having to, like I said, travel as far. And, I think everybody's a little more prepared when they come in, and they're getting kind of the answers they need at that point.
And if they have something that they think of when they're in that appointment, of course they can ask.
Yeah.
We may not have the answer right then and there, but we would obviously take that back.
Yes.
And then
if we
find that-
can't, yep,
yep,
answered at that
and then-
moment, we'll work on it.
Yep,
So
and then we'll get back to
Right.
them.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And
obviously.
for those
Right.
dates, just to kind of give everybody an idea, if they want to kind of keep on the lookout for it, if you follow our Facebook page, the Senior Resource Center Facebook page, on it, I also have on our calendar,
Mhm.
on the our website, seniorresourcecenter.net. And then we also advertise those sites in the Flash and in the Galena Gazette once a month. So
Okay.
there's kind of it's kind of usually changes locations, but it's a decent size color ad that you can that might catch your eye, green and yellow, and gives you a list of the dates. I try to list them out we try to schedule out a couple months in advance so people can have an idea, where we're at. Just because we only have those dates listed in the newspaper, it doesn't mean that the following months are going to we're coming out every month. This is ongoing. It's just, I don't want to give too much, we, like I said, try to do the scheduling just on a 2 to 3 month basis. For at least for the sites as well, because they have other things they're hosting as well. So we're finding that that's working. Word of mouth too, I think has been helpful. But yeah, I think the more information that we get out there to people, kind of seeing them more in their communities, the better.
Sorry,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
just thought of something. So on
Yep.
that note, as far as outreach, if anybody listening or they know of someone and they're listening that has a group, whether it be like a knitting group or whatever type of group of activity that people are involved in, if they would like us to come speak to a group about some of our programs and our resources, we would gladly do that. Because we want, you're talking word of mouth. It's important that people know that this is here before they reach that emergency and they really need us. Even though we work pretty well under those circumstances, we want people to be able to be as proactive and comfortable, on a day-to-day basis as possible. So we would gladly come speak.
Yeah, Sonia and I have actually been out several times, especially out to Joe Davis County, done some speaking at church groups and
retired teacher association groups.
So we love coming out and talking about the Senior Resource Center and what we have to offer, because I think sometimes I don't want to say that we're like a best kept secret. I think it's just people don't really know about us until they need us. That's kind of one of those things. So I think the more that we can get the information out there, then they already have kind of got it in the back of their minds that, hey, that's right, the Senior Resource Center could help with this. Maybe at the time your parents are doing just great, or you're doing just great, but then all of a sudden, something happens.
So if that's the case, if they just want to call and say, hey, I'm interested in having some speakers come to this group I'm involved in, can I speak to someone that can help me get that facilitated? So
definitely.
Absolutely.
Well, and I know, like, when I was trying to figure out, about food options for the family member, and stuff, it was, well, okay, they said, well, no, I don't think I qualify. And no, I don't, I can't afford that. And, whatever. And that was why they were buying, the type of food and stuff they were buying, but then when I made some calls and I did some checking, and it was like, no, actually they do qualify. And so, so sometimes, again, it's just, knowing who to call to have that resource to say, okay, where do I go? Who can help me, with this, or what are the financial requirements, or, to point me in that right direction or whatever. Definitely. So, and now also that made me think of one other thing too. We talked about transportation, we're talking about getting you guys out in the community, but you also offer some transportation options, and not just locally. And so let's talk about that.
Sure.
Yeah, we do. So of course we have our local transportation, which is Pretzel City Transit. Now that is not just transit for seniors, that is for all populations and ages. And so, but if we have a senior that has difficulty getting to a doctor's appointment, whether that be Monroe, Rockford, Chicago, Madison, you mentioned Iowa City, that they need to get to these appointments, and family lives out of town, or they have no family, or they still drive, but not at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, as we're getting into the roads being more difficult, and and getting dark early. Yes.
Right.
So yes, give us a call. We have a driver and we're looking into getting another one because the need is so large that we need to make sure we can get these individuals to their doctor's appointments, eye doctor appointments, dentist appointments, medical appointments.
Yes.
If they can financially pay for their ride, then we want them to be able to assist with that if they can. If they cannot and the financial need is there for the assistance to cover the medical ride, then we have grants that we assist with that to make sure that they get to their rides.
Yes.
To their appointments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they would
Yeah, like
just
you said.
call. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, like you said, it's, it's just call and, and
Yep.
ask for some help because like you said, this time of year, maybe it's just not, the appointment, they can only get in at 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, then
Yep.
they're gonna be driving home in the dark and that's not a good idea. Don't risk driving home in the dark and not being safe. Just, call
Right.
and see if you can, coordinate some help. And obviously you need some time to coordinate that and things like
Right.
that too. So,
And if that individual would like someone to go with them, to have that extra set of ears at those appointments, which is always, I recommend, it's always
Oh.
very important.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what age you are, it is
Right.
important to have that second set of ears and eyes there.
Yeah.
right.
I think is wonderful. So if that individual has that person that they want to go, that is going to be listening to the discussion of lab results and whatever else that they're talking about, by all means, they can go along with. We have the seating for them to attend that ride and can go along with. So absolutely.
Yeah. Super helpful. I can't tell you how many times I've been to a doctor's appointment with my mom and we would walk out of there and she'd be like, oh, they said da 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 da. And I'm like, not quite.
Not so much.
That was part of it, but that wasn't all of it.
That's right.
Right. Yeah.
We say sometimes it's selective hearing, sometimes it's we don't want to hear these things, but most of the time it's just that they're talking so fast.
They are, and you're processing on that sentence.
Yeah. They're throwing all these things at you and all these terms at you and all this stuff at you. And you're just like, what? And you heard the first thing because you're still trying to process that, like you said, and you didn't catch any of the rest. And so, it is not something against any certain age or ability or whatever. It's
So if that individual wants that, person to assist and go with them, by all means, we have the room to accommodate that for sure. So
right. And then one thing I wanted to also make sure we talked about is, and also people, if you have questions, you can comment below or send us a message. If we don't get to it today, I will make sure to send those to Sonia and Amanda. So, please, if you just have questions or anything. But one other thing I wanted to make sure we talk about is education and type of, information. We've talked all these options that you guys have. But I know one of the things you're hoping to really work on or planning to work on in 2023 and would really like some input on is other educational type of programs, like whether it's, computer classes or it's, how to get your home ready to sell or, I don't know, whatever, but looking for partnerships and ideas on, things to do in health and fitness or cooking. I don't know, I'm just throwing out anything, but
well, and prior to COVID, we had done a lot of work, especially with like FHN, Monroe Clinic, did mental health 101 type things, FHN, chronic health issues, University of Illinois Extension Office did a lot of stuff. They kind of did like I think they did a chronic illness and some diabetes training. Lots of that kind of stuff was what we were doing before, and we want to get back into that. We want to make sure that we're providing quality programming that, something that for, I guess, seniors or families, anyone maybe kind of coming into that older adult stage in life, maybe could use to kind of gain, some knowledge and resources. They can ask questions. That's, I think our focus is, maintaining kind of that educational piece. In the past, we had done a few years of maybe some bingo and some activity type things. And we're not a senior center. I know the name the senior resource center, when you say that, we're really a social service agency that we truly want to focus on our
care coordination.
The case management side of it, the advocacy, the resources that are available to, seniors and their families. That's where we want our focus to be, because we see a huge need for it. And but we also want to offer some of that educational stuff too, because I think all that goes hand in hand, because, the more knowledge somebody has, the more they're able to kind of empowers you to maybe, take care of yourself. You're kind of becoming armed with maybe this knowledge as you get older. It'll make things a little easier, and you're kind of getting those answers before you get to a point where maybe you're in a
Right.
crisis situation. So
Right.
that's kind of, I think, our goal with that piece.
Mhm.
We're definitely open to ideas. At this point, we're going to have a space that will be ready. We're hoping in the next few months. So once that happens, I do have a couple groups, community partners that have shown interest in returning, to come back and start doing some of those programming.
Mhm.
And, we look forward to kind of restarting those partnerships with everyone again, and, getting some of that out there and available to, our community members.
Yeah, so the reason I brought that up is because as people have ideas or have
Mhm.
things that, or things that maybe you used to do, and okay, we just need some new community partners to come in and help with that stuff,
Mhm.
you know. So just give them a call and,
Yeah.
talk about, okay, maybe we could, create a program on that, or we could create a class on that, or have
Yes.
some, educational, information. And so definitely to be able to get that word out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yep.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Anything else we forgot to cover, Sonia or Amanda? Anything that we we
I,
covered so much?
we covered a lot. I think another thing maybe for that information assistance piece, when we have people wanting to come in, and we're not doing walk-ins, we're doing appointments, because that helps us, like I said, same with the Joe Davis community outreach, it helps us be better prepared, our staff,
Right.
and for you, it helps you come prepared with the correct information.
Mhm.
Of course, like Sonia said, if you're here and something else comes up, that's okay. I mean, we will, it just may be that we'll have to get back to you on that information. But some of the things I think that are important to point out that we can help with, the Medicare, not just open enrollment, but Medicare questions in general, as you're maybe coming up to 65, you've got some questions, give us a call. We can have one of our SHIP counselors meet with you. We also do the benefits access program, which is it's the license plate sticker, the discount.
Mhm.
We can help with that, get that done for you if you've got questions. The senior citizen homestead, the exemption, the property tax freeze. Yeah, so some of those things we can help with the paperwork for.
Mhm.
So, and if people have questions about, healthcare, power of attorney, things, financial power of attorney, we can kind of help answer the questions, and kind of point them in the right direction on where to get the information on who to talk to. So,
Mhm.
the information and assistance piece, when you're calling in, they're kind of like that front line of the agency, because they're
Mhm.
kind of, they take a lot of the questions, because people call in and they have a lot of questions, and different, really unique questions sometimes. And so our staff get to really have a chance to,
We also have a notary here, so if something
yes,
needs to be notarized,
yep,
Yep.
it's
Speaking of those like healthcare power of attorneys and
yes,
different things like
yes.
yes,
that. So,
Give us
yep.
a call,
yep,
make that appointment, come right in, and then
absolutely,
it beats, needing to go somewhere
yep,
else.
if you're,
So we do have that.
yes,
So that is something that we can do for an individual if they need that done. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. And again, that's back to that, being proactive and, having some
Yeah.
things set in place. I was just talking to a person the other day, called me about their house, or her mother's house. Actually, her mother's not well. Her mother does not have any kind of power of attorney set up, doesn't have any,
Mhm.
and it's okay. Well, you don't have authorization to sell it either, and well, my brother, he's been doing this. Well, he doesn't have authorization to do that either,
Right,
and they've been, well, I hope mom's going to get better. Well, but, at the end of the day, we're all aging, right? And I mean, I've been through a
Right.
terrible car wreck, and, and I wasn't able to do stuff. If I hadn't had some things set up, then no
mhm,
one would have been able to pay my bills. No one would have been able to take care of anything. And
right,
so, it's stuff that, and, And I'm not quite to the senior yet, almost. But
No, but no,
but,
you're right. I mean,
it
that stuff can strike us at any time.
Yeah,
It isn't,
right,
so a lot of that stuff just isn't an age thing, but
right,
we're
right,
fortunate that we do have an agency in town that does focus on particular
right,
age groups.
Yeah.
And if someone is not of age, right, let's talk about that for a second. We don't want anyone in our community ever not having or being able to reach out to somebody and get an answer to something. So if we do have
right,
someone that's under 60 and not 18 to 59 with a
Mhm.
disability and they don't know where to start, still call us. We will
right,
seek that out. We don't want anyone in our
No,
community not having answers to something.
right.
So
right,
We'll definitely
right,
try to get
we
you
will,
pointed in the right
right,
direction once we,
absolutely,
and we work a lot with other community partners, ramp, the
right,
department doors.
doors,
So, you kind of develop those partnerships, community action, all of that.
right,
So,
right,
if you have a question and say you're not
you're not
60,
60.
that's okay.
right,
We can see, maybe what
Yep,
agency would be the best one to send you to,
right.
so.
right,
And
So
that's, I think, important because I think that way people don't feel like, oh, well, I'm not a senior, so.
right. We love
right,
serving everyone 60 and older and 18 and 59 with a disability, but all of our community members
Mhm.
matter to us.
Yeah.
So
right,
it's
right.
call us,
Yeah.
we'll help you figure it out. So
Yep. That's kind of what we tell people. It's like, they say, well,
yep,
I don't even know where to start. Well, give us a call. Let's talk
Right.
about what do you need? Where are we talking about?
Right.
Because everybody is in a different state, right?
Yeah.
absolutely,
Different stage. So,
absolutely.
yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, ladies, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate all the stuff we've covered. I really hope that, it's answered some questions for people and probably raised a lot of questions for people. But look forward to them being able to call you guys. You guys are such a resource. I mean, it
Well,
truly
thank
is the
you.
name,
Thank you.
senior resource who really, I can't tell you how many people who I've had who've said, oh my gosh, they were such a blessing during this. They provided this information with this. So really appreciate all you guys do. And so thankful to have you in the community. So,
Well,
Thank you.
thank you
And
so much.
thank you
And
for having us.
yeah, we really appreciate this. So.
Yeah,
yep.
thank
Yep.
you.